First off, if you don't mind, everyone, you have the advantage of seeing us. Can we see you, Daph and Dominic? Rob has an excuse. He's in Ecuador. But if you could turn on your cameras, that would be appreciated. At least we're speaking to people, not a blank screen. Alan is a mortgage agent based out of Ottawa. He's also an investor and my friend. And that I value more than anything, but he is an awesome investor, very knowledgeable, very creative. And you know what? You have the good fortune of being able to ask him a ton of questions today. So take advantage of it. He is here for you. So ask away.
And a good guy.
He is a phenomenal guy.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the intro. Thank you for the kind words, Rob and Rob. I'm happy to be here. I'm glad I got the invitation to speak to the Thrive community. I want to have this like an open conversation. I want to know what you guys are working on, how I can help. Certainly, I can share my perspective on things. As Rob mentioned, I am a mortgage agent, but even before a mortgage agent, in my previous life, I come from a background of engineering. So I spent 16 years, or just about 16 years in an engineering career. Into that engineering career is when I started my investing career. So this is even well before the thought of becoming a mortgage agent, starting my own mortgage business came into the picture. And really, I'll just kind of go quickly into how it all started, my story, if you will. Like I said, working as an engineer, and then my wife and I, we had our son Marcus. So he's 7 years old now. So this was about 2016. My wife was pregnant. I had kind of made the decision that I wanted to take some time off of work to spend at home with my wife, who just had a baby, and watch my son grow in those early months. The plan was to take that full year. So I talked to my boss at work about taking time off. And he was very good about it. He had kids himself. He understood. So that was awesome on his part. And throughout that year, I was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do moving forward. I started having these realizations that an engineering career, although, good, taught me a lot. You make good, decent money, salaried money. You can qualify for mortgages. That's good. But I wanted something more, and I wasn't sure what that was. I just knew I wanted something different, something more for my now expanding family. And that's where I kind of dove into different things that I never really dove into before, one of which was personal development, real estate, which led me to reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I was reading that book, kind of diving into the mindset and the real estate and the investing and all of that book that I'm sure if you haven't read it, you definitely should put it on your list of things to read, that book talks about. And there was one day where I was on the couch and my wife was next to me on her computer, and this ad popped up for this seminar, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And she's like, "Hey, didn't you read that book?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Well, they're having this seminar like at the hotel that's literally like, just down the street from where we live." So I went to that. And then, kind of one thing led to another from there, and ended up investing in education with that group, that Rich Dad, Poor Dad group. So that's how my investing career started. Didn't know anything about investing really. I mean, I had my own primary residence that most people do. You buy a house, it's your primary residence. I kind of thought, maybe one day would be nice to maybe buy a rental property, but that one day is always one day, right? That's never doesn't lead to any action. It doesn't really lead to anything. It's just kind of nice to have that. I'm sure we've all thought of things we'd like to have one day, but are we actually taking action towards it? But that education is where I learned about different strategies, different financing methods, met some amazing people, some of which are on this call right now. Learned a lot from those people, learned a lot from other people, continued building my network, continued building my education from there. First strategy really I should go back. I had bought a investment property early on in that kind of investing path. Just a townhouse here in Ottawa, rental. Me and my wife bought it. Kind of your standard, pulled equity out of our own property to put down as the down payment. Kind of we're breaking even on cash flow if you include things like property management, like we were doing ourselves, but not really calculating that. Maybe some expenses and things like probably negative cash flow, if I'm being honest. And then kind of wanting to grow from that is when I was like, okay, we got to find out like different strategies and how we can really get this to grow. And that's when I went into lease options, which really like spoke to me from an engineering side. It was at this point I had returned back to my engineering job after taking that time off. So the lease option strategy, which is very numbers focused and very process focused, really kind of spoke to the way I think. So I dove into that, and that's kind of what kickstarted this whole growth of investing. Did a number of rent to own deals, growing my network, none of which I put any of my own money in. Okay, so this is like, you know, a lot of people talk about no money in investing. How do you do that? Other people's money. This strategy allowed me to do that, and really opened my eyes to creative finance and how you can control investment without really putting any of your own money in and not putting any of your capacity to borrow in terms of mortgages in. So for me, we controlled the properties and we controlled the deal, but we didn't really put anything in other than the effort and the knowledge and the skills required to put those deals together, which 100% counts for something. So the money, the qualifying for the mortgages, but you also need that skill and the knowledge, and that goes for any kind of investing strategy, I would say, not just rent to own, but as long as you can bring one of those elements to the table, you have something to work with, and it's up to us as investors to determine where we fit in and where we can provide that value. So yeah, just from there, grew into multifamily. First multifamily that we purchased was actually a 27 unit, not on purpose. When I thought multifamily, I thought, yeah, maybe duplex, triplex, maybe a 6, 7, 8 unit would be nice. And that kind of just led to diving in and making a ton of phone calls, talking to a lot of people, and seeing where opportunities lied, and having this background of education that I invested in, having this background of a network, having this background of taking those steps to build the knowledge and kind of like I would say like the foundation, the persistence, the attitude you need to kind of push these things forward. When that 27 unit opportunity came, it wasn't like, oh my God, how am I going to do that? The dollar number is so high. The 27 tenants versus like 3 or 4. That's like, it was just like, okay, I know how to do this, because it's not about so much the size of it. It's how you can structure things and how you can take advantage of what you have available to you. And again, that 27 unit building, why the dollar figure didn't matter, because I knew I could get it with none of my money in. I knew I could get it without qualifying for the mortgage myself. And, you know, we still have that in our portfolio, and it's very nicely operating building. First one in the multifamily space. And from there grew from 27 units, I think up to 85 units as was. And since then we've sold a couple of buildings. So I think we sit somewhere in the 75 range in terms of doors right now, but, yeah, and that's kind of where things are now. Have experience in, like I said, lease options, so rent to owns, flips, BRRRR strategy, multifamily, commercials. I've borrowed private money. I've been a private lender myself. So really, and then, yeah, just to wrap things up. So all through this investing career of building that portfolio, I was continuing to work my engineering job. And then the pandemic hit. I'm sure we all remember that. And I had a lot of time at home. I was doing work from home for clients, engineering work, a lot of time to myself, just kind of thinking again, kind of like when my son was born, I'm like, hey, where do I really want to go from here? And having conversations with my wife. And throughout that whole investing path, I always, like I said, found the financing aspect of it very interesting. And it's what spoke to me. I love diving into the numbers and the creativity of how to make deals work, how I can pull different elements to get it to work, whether it's bank financing, whether it's private financing. And I always told myself, I'm like, you know what? One day, that keyword again, one day I would love to be a mortgage broker. And that kind of just led into the pandemic and having a conversation with my wife. And I was like, you've mentioned this mortgage thing for like the last year or two. Like, why don't you just do it? And I was like, yeah, why don't I just do it? And because like the first step is really just registering for the course to get the license and doing the exam. And I registered for it. And this was last fall. So sorry, fall of 2021 is when I got my officially got my mortgage license. And then I was at the time still working my engineering job, as I said. And then as I was kind of building that up, it was getting kind of busy, and I was doing my engineering job at the same time. And at that point, I was just like, okay, I talked to my boss and I'm like, I'm retiring. I'm done from my engineering career. I'm going all in on real estate here. Now is the time. And so I have the investing side. I have the mortgage side. I went full-time into the mortgages at the beginning of February of 2022. So just over a year in mortgages. It's going very well. I feel the experience I bring as an investor into that realm has really helped me. I understood the lingo. I understood the verbiage of mortgages. So I can relay that knowledge and that experience to my clients and really help them, not just for financing, your standard primary residential home, but if they want to grow and build a portfolio, as well as investors who are either just getting started or would really like to know how to grow their portfolio and leverage all the tools that are available to them. Like I said, whether it's bank financing, private financing, all these kinds of methods out there that I've experienced myself that really just come down to structure your how you're getting into the deal and how ultimately you're exiting the deal. If you have all those elements in place and you can kind of formulate a plan, then I truly believe that having the right mortgage person on your side, in your power team, can help you navigate that. Because I can remember being a early investor and trying to put all that together is just super overwhelming. And you think like, hey, I can finance this because I've heard this bank gives this rate for this many years. So if I just run the numbers with that and then I put it on paper, I have a deal. But it's sometimes difficult to circle back and be like, that deal you have does not fit that type of financing. If that makes sense at all. Like that.
Allen,
yeah.
I just want to add something to what you said. Allen was an investor first and became a mortgage agent, right? And one of the things we've noticed as we've grown our business is not all mortgage agents, brokers are equal. It's not that difficult to become a mortgage agent, but to
it's
become
really not.
good,
I will admit that it is not. The barrier to entry is $400 and a week of your time.
But to be a good mortgage agent who understands investing, that's the type of person you want to be working with as your mortgage agent, because there are a lot of unqualified people out there, a lot. And if you can find somebody who understands investing, who is an investor themselves, that speaks volumes to their ability to work with you and be creative and find the right type of financing and guide you in the right direction to get the deals. So I've had the benefit of working with Allen before he was a mortgage agent. Now it's even more interesting because he has that background of being an investor and the ability to get mortgages. So interview and qualify your mortgage broker or agent that you're working with. Find someone like Allen who is an investor. You will benefit greatly from that. Sorry, Allen.
That's perfect. Like, yeah, that kind of wraps up my background story and how I got to where I am now. So I kind of I guess I want to open it up to, like I said earlier, what you guys are working on, if there's anything specific I can help or how we can direct this conversation. And I want to keep it very conversational because I feel like just telling those stories will help a lot. Or Kurt, you're raising your hand if you have
Yeah, I don't have a
a way to
question,
direct
but
it.
yeah, no, I spoke with Daryl. Was it yesterday, Daryl, or a couple days ago? And you had a couple questions specifically. I'm glad you're here. That he asked me, and I'm like, Saturday morning, Alan can answer those for you. So, Daryl, ask away. This is your time.
Awesome.
I wrote them down. I gotta look for them. I wrote the questions down. I'm just gonna find them. I forgot what they were.
I know one was regarding RRSPs. I think it was an RRSP swap or something with your parents, if that was possible in some way. Yeah.
I wanted to ask if because I was hearing, I'm not too sure exactly how it works, but I was hearing that you're not allowed to RSP swap with your parents to family members. I'm not too sure if that's exactly true.
That is true. So an RRSP loan, in order to use that to invest in real estate, it has to be a arm's length transaction. So you cannot have family relationships with that other person who's investing in your real estate deal. So your parents would not be able to lend you an RRSP loan to put towards a down payment on a property. And there's very strict guidelines of that, and you can't really circumvent that, because at the end of the day, you can go down that path, but they're going to find out, and it's not very difficult to find out, even if it's a different last name. It's just, I would say, don't do it. Now, the way to kind of, I'd say, work around that is to have another person. So have your parents invest in an RRSP loan for somebody else, and then that somebody else invest their RRSPs in your deal. Now that can get complex because that third person is essentially supposed to be not an arm's length person. So someone that doesn't have a previous relationship with yourself, your parents. But in order to find the same timing, the same deal amount, the same terms, the same risk of the two transactions, because, for example, if yours is on a first mortgage, you don't want that second person to be asking for a second mortgage, and which would require a different rate, different amount. Like there's that triangle needs to work, and it can get pretty complex. So like those are just kind of a few things to consider when you're talking about this swap of RRSP money. It can get pretty complicated, and there's a few things like you kind of got to stay on top of and keep on track of.
Yeah, regardless if it's in a corporation, right?
Yeah, the corporation part is not. Well, what kind of property is it, first of all?
Well, I don't really have a property right now. I'm just asking how, like.
Yeah, so the corporation, again, these things are easy to find out who's the owner of the corporation.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, like it's just a quick search. So and there's a lot of
So it's better
misconceptions
not to
about.
just take no chance in.
Well, I mean, you could do it, and then ultimately what's going to happen is that RRSP money that you thought you were investing in real estate was actually cashed out, and you'll have you or your parents will have a pretty nice tax bill to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Probably just avoid it then.
Yeah, but like I said, if you do have that third person, it could be worked in such a way that, I'll give you RRSPs, you give me RRSPs, and it can work that way. It can flow kind of that way. Yeah, Rob, you have your hand up?
Yeah, it's really important if you're going to be doing that kind of a transaction between multiple people that you use a mortgage broker. The mortgage broker acts as an independent third party in the transaction. If you try and do it even between friends, what will happen is that the government will deem that you no longer have an arm's length transaction. So you have to be really, really careful when you start doing swaps. Has to involve people that you don't know, so that if you're ever audited, the trace goes back through the mortgage broker who actually arranged for the different financing. If you
Yeah.
try and do this kind of thing on your own, you stand the risk of having the government deregister your RSP.
Yeah, that's a good point, Rob. And I think it was earlier this year. So the only company that I know of in Canada that facilitates these RRSP investing into real estate vehicles is Olympia Trust. And I believe, and I can double check this, I believe Olympia Trust has come out with a new policy that they will only facilitate these loans through an independent mortgage broker. So before that, you could kind of be like, hey, I know you, you know me. Do you want to invest in my real estate deal? You have RSP money, you want to get a higher return, that you could just go to Olympia Trust between the two of you and it could fill out the paperwork and it could work. But I don't even think that's an option anymore, unless there's someone else who's coming into this space, another trust company that's going to do that. But I believe they came up with that. It was either last year or this year that's new.
Yeah, Olympia Trust let us do it, but each party had to be, we had to be arm's length, and each party had to have their separate lawyers. And
Okay, that might be it. Yeah.
So when I've done my lending through mortgage brokers, we all have separate lawyers, but the mortgage broker actually arranges for the lawyer too, which is a really cool feature. If you don't have a real estate, a mortgage lawyer, your mortgage broker who's arranging this funding for you can set you up with a lawyer who will do it.
Right.
Okay, I understand better. Yeah, thanks.
Who else? I know, I believe, Lola, if you're able to speak, I think you had some questions.
So I guess if I want to start investing in, say I have 2 duplexes and 3 triplexes, 5 properties. If I'm going through private lenders, but they all have to approve for mortgages, would I be able to invest in all those properties, or is it just more one of a kind of thing?
Sorry, can you say that again, Daryl? You were
Like,
cutting out.
would I be able to invest in multiple properties at the same time if I'm going through private lenders and they have to invest in they have to approve for the mortgage?
You could really invest in multiple properties with any kind of lender. Now, there will be certain lenders that will want to know more about each individual property that you're investing in. So, I mean, like, let's take A banking. They'll want to know if you're investing in 5 properties, they want to know, okay, well, this is the one we're lending on, but what's going on with those other 4? Because the debt, the mortgages you have on those, the cash flow you have on those, they'll impact your income and debt ratios. So they'll want to make sure that you have the ability to carry that loan, the one that they're lending on. And that is more or less true with private lenders as well. However, the private lenders and even going into the alternative space, they'll care more about the asset itself. So they'll ask questions like, what's the loan to value? What's the appraised value of the property? What is your exit strategy? Which is probably the first question they're going to ask, because this is kind of a misconception with private. It's not like private is any easier of a path to get lending than A or B. It's just different lending. And their main priority is what's the value of the property and what's your exit strategy? So why are you going private now? And what's your plan to get out of private? Because if you're going to tell them, oh, no, I'm just getting private lending and you're going to pay 10, 12%, not everyone can carry a property at 10, 12% for an extended period of time. And if you tell them you can, then they'll want to see the financials to prove that you can. Right. So yes, they will. They'll want to know, what else do you have on the go? What makes you feel that you can support this loan and the terms of that loan? And it's in your best interest to to provide that information. It's like, okay, if you're making great cash flow on these other 4 properties and that's what's allowing you to finance this one, then it's probably in your best interest to let that person, let that lender know. But yeah, you could invest in multiple properties all at once. It might get complicated. It might be a lot of things going on all at once if you've got 5 projects on the go, but certainly possible. Yeah.
Sounds good.
If I could chime in, that's a quick question. Just in what you were saying about, and Daryl was talking about the corporation. Alan, what would be your recommendation? If I assume, I'm not sure if this is 100% right, but if you're looking at A lending banks, I've heard that an individual after, let's say 5 mortgages, they don't want to look at you anymore, sort of thing. At what point in time would you say you need a corporation? If you know you're going to be buying quite a few properties, at what point would you say either you have an incorporation, and is it, even with an incorporated company, is it still a traditional route that you could use private money or whatever, and then eventually you're going to refinance and get rid of that mortgage and put it with an A or B lender? And so in a corporation, is it unlimited properties, I guess?
Yeah, okay, that's actually a very good question, and there's kind of different layers to that. And yeah, I have lots of thoughts on corporations based on my own experience, based on what I've seen other investors do, but based on mortgages and people trying to like get properties under, you know, corporate structures and stuff. So really there's probably more, but I'll touch on 3 elements to having a corporate structure. Okay. There's the legal side, there's the accounting side, and then there's the mortgage side. Okay. So, and depending on who you speak to, you're going to get a different answer. So the legal side will be like, you're buying one property, put it under a corporation, because that protects you the most. Now, that's from a lawyer speaking. You have a property in a legal and in a corporate structure. If anything were to happen in that corporate structure, then the only thing that is at risk is whatever's held in that corporate structure. They can't come after you personally, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that is all true, and that is what a lawyer will tell you, and that is what a lot of investors will be like, oh, whoa, okay, so if my tenant falls down the stairs, breaks their leg, they can't, you know, sue me for my personal residence, come after my, you know, assets I have in investments and whatever else. But the reality is, we live in Canada. I think all of us are Canadian here, right? So we don't live in the States, where I think some of this kind of thought process comes, where it's like, oh boy, I better protect myself in case I get sued. Like, we have insurance. We're not like a super litigious country. Like, not everyone's suing everyone like in the States because, you know, they nudged you with their car and all of a sudden you want $5 million. Like, that just doesn't happen here in reality. Okay. So that's the legal aspect. A lawyer will tell you, protect yourself, 100% protect yourself for a worst case scenario. Now, accounting, I'm not an accounting expert. I'm not even a legal expert. Well, I'm definitely not a legal expert, not a lawyer, not an accountant. But from accounting, there are tax benefits for sure for having things in a corporate structure. But there's cost to it as well. To set it up, to pay the accounting every year, to file your taxes every year, there's cost to it. Now then, I will touch on the lending side of it to answer your question, Andrew. The lending side, at the end of the day, when you're talking about residential properties, you are still going to provide a personal guarantee on that loan. So whether you have it in a corporation or not, you are still looked at, and this is on what you mentioned about A lending, you are still the primary face of the lending. Okay, it doesn't matter what your structure is, they're going to want to, okay, who's the owner of the corporation? What do you make? What's your credit? What are your other liabilities? All of that is going to come into factor. And then that is going to assess like how many properties you can start building. Okay. So before you even start thinking like, okay, well, this A lender, they'll only do 4 properties. This one will only do 5. It really comes down to, are you even able to carry 4 or 5? That should be your main question, right? And like, are you going to build that portfolio of 4 to 5 doors? And if you're not, if you only want to buy 1 or 2 properties and considering all those other things, the accounting costs, the legal costs, the structure costs to put it all in place, if you're going to own a duplex and a triplex and you're going to be good, do you really want to put that in a corporate structure? Okay. And the reason I say that is because if you want to keep yourself open to the most lenders available in those residential spaces, don't put it in a corporate structure. Okay. And again, it's because one, when a lender sees it in a corporate structure, they're going to want more paperwork. They might put a premium because they're putting it in a corporate structure. And they're going to want to know all the details of how the money flows, et cetera, into that corporate structure. And then it can get difficult to get the lending with those A lenders. Okay. And not every lender will even lend in a corporate structure. They'll be their hard line is like, no, we only do in personal name. So if you want to limit yourself to these lenders, then put it in a corporate structure, but you're balancing the legal protection, the tax advantages, the accounting advantages of having that corporate structure with a smaller pool of lenders who will lend to corporations.
Okay, so just a follow-up quick question to that. I had heard, maybe this is larger multifamilies, I had heard there's a point where they don't look at you, they look at the asset. Is that true?
Yeah, so now we're talking into commercial lending, where it is the performance of the asset which matters. So
what's the dividing line between commercial and just residential? Is it
if
5
we're
units and above?
talking rental properties, it's 5 doors and up. Right? Like, I mean, we have office space, strip malls, that kind of stuff, that all falls under commercial lending. But if we're talking just strictly rental properties, yeah, residential rentals, 5 doors would fall into commercial lending. And then there's still even a few things to consider because like not especially in this market, this day and age, getting a property to fall under commercial lending, well, they'll just look at the asset to what we call debt service at a 1.2 ratio. Some lenders will even go to 1.3, is difficult. So what a lot of people, and what I've seen a lot of people do who are buying 5, 6, 10 unit buildings, they have to contribute their income in order to get the loan amount they want. Right? This is like, hey, I want to go commercial lending. I don't want to be considered, just consider the asset. They'll be like, okay, give me the income, give me the expenses. They'll run it, which is very different. The lender will run their underwriting, their numbers, very different than you and I would as an investor. And they'll come up with that, what they feel is comfortable debt servicing. They'll take into consideration vacancy. You might be like, hey, vacancy is only at 2%. They'll be like, we're taking 8%. Okay. Hey, here are the power bills, here are the water bills. It's like, oh no, we take 20%. So they'll underwrite it a certain way and they'll be like, okay, Andrew, you got a commercial property you want to be considered, we'll lend you 40% loan to value based on our underwriting. So it's up to you. It's $1 million building. You need to come up with $600,000 down payment before they'll lend you 400. Right? So it's challenging. Now, they might lend you more if you earn salary of 150K. They might bridge that gap between that 400 and that 1 million up to say 75% loan to value. And at that point, now you are being considered. Right? So it's not just the asset, it's the asset plus Andrew, what's the total income? We might lend on that.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Hello, I get a question.
Hey, Winnie.
Hi. Okay. My question is about for people, like for a couple, we're in probably one of the couple will be transitioning from the rat race to become a full-time real estate investor. So, and this happens like in your case, or some other people case wherein they want to be a full-time real estate investor. My question is about what options can we have to get financing for mortgages? Because usually they will check your pay stub, your employment, stuff like that to go with the approval process. Now, what option are we?
So
we have here?
The truth, lenders hate full-time real estate investors, period. Okay. So and this is me being like totally honest and transparent. I've spoken to many investors in that spot. It's like, hey, I have a good portfolio. I'm making this in rental money. I'm quitting my job and I want to continue building my portfolio. As soon as you tell a lender that you earn your money through rental properties, your options are very small. Okay, they do not like that. All right, so all this grandiose ideas of leaving your job to build their portfolio, and again, I'm being totally honest here because I know that's a lot of people's goals. If you want to maintain your best financing, you should have a steady source of income. And that sounds ridiculous because rental properties is a steady source. People need a place to live. But I've seen both sides of it, from the lending side and from the investor side. Okay, so lenders do not necessarily, I should say this, lenders will always evaluate your project based on worst case scenario. And sometimes that doesn't make sense, right? Because if you earn your income through a job, you could get laid off tomorrow. That's reality. But for whatever reason, the lender will say that your job is more secure than having 10 rental doors, because what if tomorrow all your tenants leave? Which is ridiculous, right? But that's how they'll evaluate your file, because they'll look at rental properties as risky. And you can tell by the way lenders are set up that they do view rental properties and investing in real estate as risky. And the reality is, if you go with them, you're like, same house, I want to buy it as owner occupied. They'll be like, we'll give you 95% loan to value, and we'll give you the best interest rates we can offer you. Second, you say, no, I'm buying this exact same house, but I'm not living in it. I'm going to rent it out to this guy. They'll be like, okay, well, no, we need 20% because it's riskier, and we're charging you a higher interest rate. So just based on that fact alone, it speaks to that they just view rentals as riskier, the whole rental landscape as riskier. So when you go to them and tell them, I earn all my income through rental properties, right away, you're a risk. Okay, now there are ways to still get financing. So that was a big kind of like scare you, oh my God, I don't want to be an investor anymore. But that's not the case, because there's still options. But you need to be like strategic about how you do this. And a lot of the times it comes down to like, what are you showing on your tax documents, right? So people take advantage of the fact that they're a business owner and that they're, a landlord, and maybe they have like a property management section to that, but they take advantage, like, in kind of going back to what Andrew was saying, like different corporate structures to minimize tax impact, bring down their income so that, it doesn't show on paper that they're earning a lot of money, but maybe they're bringing in like 200 or 300K and they want to go invest in another property. And like, hey, I'm making a 300K. I want to buy this $1.5 million property. I can afford the debt service, but your accountant has used your corporate structure to their advantage to bring your income show 50K. They're not going to, that lender's not there. First of all, you're showing 50K on your taxes and you're telling them you're a real estate investor, a full-time real estate investor. They're not going to lend to you. They're not going to lend to you. Right. So what you could do is be like, I'm going to claim that full 300K. Your account will be like, you're crazy. You're going to have this huge tax bill. But you're like, okay, I'm going to do this for the next 2 years so I can go back to an A lender and get that $1.5 million loan to buy my next property. So there again, like this whole kind of conversation about corporate structure and setting up business and stuff, there's all kinds of like give and take that you can't have your cake and eat it too. Right now, kind of building off of that, if you can show 300K on bank statements, on invoices, on different ways that money's coming in, there's alternative lenders, there's private lenders who are more common sense, I would say. Be like, okay, you know what? We play in this real estate space as well. We can see on your bank statements that you're bringing in 300K. we will lend on it. Again, it's risky because it's rental properties, but we'll lend on it. Now, your tax bill is low, but you're not getting the 5-6% interest rate that an A lender might be giving you. But now all of a sudden you're paying 8 or 9% with a 3, 4, 5% lender fee in order to secure that financing. So there's all kinds of options that allow you to, right? But it's all kind of how you set it up. So yeah, I think it's a mindset thing that we've been taught. Like, we all want to be in the A lending space, especially if we're earning good money, we're smart, we're able to leave the rat race. We should get AAA lending options because we've done it. We've made it. We've left the rat race. We're making good money on our rentals. I'm going to go to the A lending bank and be like, hey, I want to finance this property. Like, look at what I'm doing. And they'll be like, nope, sorry. We won't lend to you, but we will lend to that person in that stable T4 pay stub job. And you, no, sorry, we can't help you. So yeah, like we need, like, I would say, like, just kind of wrap this up is you want to be able to talk to your accountant. You want to make sure you have a mortgage broker on your side who understands this, like what your goal is. If you're leaving your job, so before you even leave your job, should probably get this in place with your mortgage agent. Like, hey, what if I leave my job and I want to buy more properties like in the next year or 2 years? What is that going to look like for me? And make sure you understand that before you kind of like, okay, leave the workforce and then be like, okay, I want to buy this other property. And you're not really sure where you fall. And then you're kind of in no man's land because you don't know what you can afford, what you can go out and look for, and what you're ultimately going to get like approved for from A, B, private lending. Like, it's, and then you're going to second guess. It's like, oh, was it even a good idea to do this? Now I need 2 years of history to show that business income. So it's yeah, it's a pretty big topic, right? And I talk to a lot of investors about this. It's not like, sometimes it's just best to stay in your job, build the portfolio until you get it to a point, and then leave, right? Or find different ways to make money, your income, so that you can continue building that portfolio. Like income, and by that I mean income that a lender will look at it and be like, yeah, we can verify that. That looks good.
Perfect. Yeah, it's an eye opener for me to look on the two sides of the coin. Like, yeah, there's a lot of information there, and yeah, something to think about.
Yeah, and sometimes it's very frustrating to try and stay ahead of the curve of a lender. And I deal with this on a daily basis, right? Like, lenders they have their own guidelines and policies, but then there's almost like this other side to lenders where it's based on, I'd say, their appetite. Like right now, A lenders are hurting. At least a lot of them are. So what they would look at, say, 6 to 8 months ago and say, yes, or sorry, no, we were not going to lend on that project from 8 months ago. Today, because inventory is down, like mortgage volume overall is just smaller and banks still want to make their money. So they'll kind of open up their appetite and be like, okay, well, maybe we can make a little bit of an adjustment here, a little bit of an exception, and we'll take on that project to fit it under our lending umbrella. So, and it's very difficult as borrowers to always understand that. Again, why it's important to kind of stay on top and have a mortgage broker in your power team who does this on a daily basis and being like, hey, yeah, like this is the lender that's probably willing to do this today. Maybe we should take advantage of it, because maybe a month from now, they're not going to be willing to do it. And there's this ebb and flow of the market and, inventory and the different projects, location matters, all of that matters. And it's like frustrating. Like I said, frustrating, because you're like, my friend, another investor I know did the similar project a year ago, and now you're telling me no. And it's just because, yeah, our appetite's changed. Policy guidelines are still the same, but our appetite's different now. So it's all a lot of things to consider.
Okay, all right, thank you.
If I can just jump in for another question, I'm hogging the mic here, but sorry, I got to get these questions out. So Alan, about a year and a half from now, I have the ability to early retirement, and it's an engineering municipal job. Sorry. And so at that point, I'd be getting early retirement, 60% of my pay as like a regular month-to-month pension, versus they have this commuted value. You can get a lump sum payout, and with that, you get I'm not sure the percentage, but based on my statement, it would be like $450,000 locked in a lira, and then the rest is your payout. Um, uh, Correct me if I'm wrong. Can I not do private lending through my lira? Because I'm trying to decide whether I should take the lump sum or just take the regular pension, which shows an income for the mortgage people to see, okay, this guy's got a regular income. It'll be 60%. It'd be very close to my take home pay now, but
Yeah, I've never lent through a lira, so I might not be the best person to ask that question to. I believe if it's a registered account, it kind of falls under the same umbrella as like an RRSP loan, so you could still invest, kind of like what we were talking about in an arm's length transaction to do that. But I am not 100% sure. I can find out for you, Andrew, like what to consider there. Now, is it better to take a lump sum or the income? It really depends. Like, it's hard to answer without knowing what your goals and outlook are for yourself personally. Like what do you want to achieve? I'll say just having a chunk of money in the bank can help you in getting financing, because there's certain programs out there that will look at your overall net worth and lend on you based on that. And then there's certain lenders and more kind of traditional where it's like, what's the regular income coming in and what can we use of that regular income to service the debt? So both will work. It's just really, again, like, what are your goals? Like, how are you like sustaining yourself through your retirement and all that? But that would be the questions I would ask just to kind of better understand your situation.
yeah, because the bank I was dealing with a year ago had said, nope, if you take the lump sum, we will not do anything with you. And they're one
So
of the
that's
A-list.
probably a bank. And again, this is why it's important not just to go to your bank and be like, oh, the answer is no. Well, I guess I'm stuck then. I'll take the monthly payments, when monthly payment might be better for you. But I know there's lenders who will be like, okay, you got this lump sum. If it's liquid, we'll put you in the net worth program and this is what we can lend to you on. So I know that's available. Like other lenders, other banks have that. Your bank might not. And that's the trouble going to your bank when you're like, I want to go to you with a mortgage to whatever bank. And they'll be like, this is the product we offer you. This is all we can offer you because that's our model. This is our banking mortgage. And if it doesn't fit for you, like, then what are you going to do? Are you going to fit your goals to match the bank? Or are you going to find a lender that will work with you so that you can attain your goals?
Yeah, I agree. I think Rob has something to say.
Yeah, for investment purposes, your lira is just considered like an RRSP. The restriction on the lira is what you can do with it in terms of withdrawals, because your employer is putting it in there. So there's legislation that prevents you from withdrawing before a certain age. You have no restrictions at all from doing private lending within a lira.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Rob.
So you should qualify that. It has to be a mortgage. Same rules as RSP. It's not just private lending, but it has to be a mortgage on a Canadian property, just like RSP.
All right, who's got another question? This is good. What's up, Daryl?
So what if you don't have an income coming in consistently, but you're just getting chunks of money, like, you know?
Well, how are you going to service the debt on a loan if you're not earning income? So if you come to me, you're like, I need a mortgage. I'll be like, okay, Daryl, what is your income? You're like, 0. Well, why would any lender, not me, any other mortgage broker who works with lenders, why would they lend to you? What's the criteria? What's the plus for them? How are they going to feel good about lending you money? And it's not a trick question, right? Like, so
Yeah, no, I know.
So I'll just use an example here, like in a hypothetical example. If you are not earning income and you want to invest in real estate, then you going on a mortgage is probably not a good idea. Does that mean the answer is that's the answer, that we put a hard line on in the sand and be like, yeah, you can't invest in real estate. Sorry, Daryl. Not true. So as I said earlier, every deal I've been in, especially in the early days, I didn't put my own money in and I didn't qualify for any mortgages. Okay, so there's this fine line between what we want to do. So maybe you want to collect all these properties, you want to have them all under your name, you want to build the wealth and you want to have it all for yourself. That I could say is probably going to be very unlikely for you right now. But that does not mean you cannot invest in real estate. That does not mean you can't start building your wealth. It doesn't mean you can't start building those relationships. So maybe you need to partner with someone who can qualify for loans, who does earn income, but they qualify for the loans because they work their job. Maybe they're a busy, I don't know, engineering consultant. They work 14 hours a day. They don't have time to go look for properties. They don't have time to structure deals, meet realtors, meet sellers. They don't have time for that, but they'd love to invest in real estate. They might be the people you need to talk to. Be like, hey, my income's up and down right now. I can't qualify for loans, but I got like free time. I'm going to go out, find all these opportunities. If I get something, you have 100K saved up. If I can pay you 10% on that return, would you be interested? 12%? And however you have those conversations, it doesn't have to start off with the return and that, and like maybe you just find out more about each other and what, where you are and what your goals are. And if they align, that's great. Then you can further it into the money conversation. But the bottom line is you can still invest in real estate. There's nothing stopping you. No down payment, no money, nothing. Then you got to figure out like, where's that other element? Okay, if you don't have the money, you don't have the income right now, are you bringing an element that is worthy of someone helping you? Are you going to help that person so that they can help you and then you both win? And that's like really the bottom line. And yeah, and it wasn't like when I started, it wasn't that I didn't have the money. It was, and I didn't, like, to be honest, I didn't have like the available cash to put into down payments on houses. Like I wasn't really in a situation, like I'm sure I could qualify for mortgages, but where I wanted to go, I didn't necessarily have the capacity to qualify for as many mortgages as I wanted. And my knowledge at the time was growing. So when I first learned about the rent to own strategy, and it was very numbers focused, I'm like, hey, I'm an engineer. I'm good at numbers. I can put all this together. I can like break it all down. And then I can not only do that, but I can communicate it to somebody else. Be like, this is the advantages of this. Would you be interested if these types of opportunities came our way? And it just became like building your skill there, building my skill in the numbers and understanding the rent to own strategy. That's what allowed people to be like, yeah, here's the down payment. Where do I sign for the mortgage? It was just very like at that point, I don't want to say easy, but it became less complicated because I had developed the third element that person didn't have. They had the money, they had the ability to qualify, but they didn't know how to do a rent to own. They didn't know where to find tenant buyers. They didn't know how to structure it. They were just like, oh, you're giving me this, like, I think some of them were like 35% year after year return. Like, yeah, like, let's do it. So and you're in the right place to develop those skills, you just kind of really need to like buckle down and work on developing those skills because it's all available here. And there's people like Rob, I know is very, very well versed in rent to own, creative financing in general. Like if you haven't taken his course and gone through his material, I've done it, I think twice, maybe 3 times with, he was the one who taught me, right?
You're addicted to learning.
Yeah. And, and every time like he spoke, it was just like, you pick up pieces of nuggets of information and you're like, oh, okay. And then I'll say the key to that, to learning, is when you pick up that nugget, it's great. Like it's in your brain, but unless you've actually put it into practice, it's not really worth anything, because you'll learn how it fits you and how you can explain it to people by only doing it. And I'll tell you, when I first started investing, those conversations I would have with people were terrible. Okay. And that's the reality of it. You walk out of a meeting, a coffee meeting, and you feel embarrassed. You feel like, what the hell did I just do? I can't do this. But that's what you're going to have to do, right? If you're just starting, you're going to have terrible conversations before you have good ones, because that's practice. That's reps. It's like a baby walking. They're going to fall, hurt themselves, do all this stuff that is unsafe before they're like, now they're, running around and you're chasing them and they're faster than you, right? That's what you want to be. So you want to go through that whole process, and everyone everyone kind of has that element of like determination and discipline if they're going to do it or not. And I've seen like the widespread, like kind of going back to like the truth of what I've seen as an investor. When I took those courses, I could be in a room of say like 50, 60, 100 people. And I would say, like, take the number of 100 people. I would say if 10 people bought investment properties, I might be being generous. There's a lot of people who went through that education and they didn't do a thing. It's the truth. Like, I know, I speak to them. I make contacts with them. I sometimes reach out to them today and be like, hey, what's going on? And they'll be like, yeah, I'm still figuring it out. And I'm like, that was 7 years ago when I started. We started at the same spot. I built this portfolio and you're still learning. Okay, well, and not to point fingers or anything, everyone's got their life circumstances. I understand that, but are you really here to get going? Or are you just here to, quote unquote, learn and wait for things to happen without making them happen? That's my kind of, I'll get off my soapbox now. You know what? I'm in the Facebook group. I'm in the Thrive Community Facebook group. So shoot me a message there, connect with me, and yeah, we can take it from there. Like that's good.
Awesome. Well, Allen, thank you very much. For this morning, it was amazing. It's awesome to hear, somebody that's in both worlds, as a mortgage agent as well as an investor, and understanding, what it takes to get started from the beginning to get to where you guys are now. So that was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, happy to do it, and yeah, hopefully I can come back.